We're a little late already, so I'll start even while people are filling in the seats. My name is Brian Rooney. I'm your MC tonight. You will be hearing the least from me. We consider this a successful event already. We have an overflow crowd, and so far no one has been accused of sexual harassment. Today, as probably most or all of you know, former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn pleaded guilty and agreed to cooperate with the special prosecutor's investigation. Also in Washington today, the Senate was moving closer to passing their tax reform bill. So obviously elections have consequences, so that's why you're all here tonight. So we'll get going, and I'll introduce the candidates now. Gareth Rhodes. Gareth was born here in the 19th District and grew up working on a farm in Ulster County. After graduating from Kingston High School, he went straight to work drilling water wells and was a volunteer firefighter. Rhodes later became the first member of his immediate family to earn a four-year college degree. And after serving 5 years as Andrew Cuomo's traveling press secretary, he left to earn a law degree from Harvard. Gareth Rhodes. Antonio Delgado. He graduated from Colgate University. I have a special affection for him for that reason. He was a Rhodes Scholar. He earned his law degree at Harvard. Antonio created a music company designed to help young people learn and be civically engaged through music. As a lawyer, he's practiced business law. He was born and raised in Schenectady. Antonio lives in Rhinebeck with his wife and twin boys. Antonio Delgado. Pat Ryan. He's a West Point graduate who served 2 tours of duty with the 8th Infantry in Iraq. He was born and raised in Kingston. After leaving the Army as a captain, Pat founded 2 technology companies that provided cutting-edge analytics software and cybersecurity tools to the military. Pat now works for a technology company that helps business, media, and government track and respond to terrorist attacks and other critical events in real time. Pat Ryan. Jeff Beals. Jeff grew up on his family's farm in the Hudson Valley. He's a former CIA intelligence officer and State Department diplomat who negotiated for peace in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. He became one of the longest-serving diplomats in the Iraq War and was decorated by the Army and the State Department. Jeff now is a high school history teacher in Woodstock, where he lives with his wife and 2 children. Jeff Beals. Brian Flynn. Brian Flynn is a small business owner and consultant. He says his political activism was inspired by the death of his older brother, JP, in the 1988 bombing of Pan Am 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland. He began by demanding answers from the US government about the reason for the attack and says he learned through that how to fight for change. Flynn is a 3rd-generation Greene County resident and lives in Hunter with his family. Brian Flynn. And last, David Clegg. Dave has been a personal injury and civil rights attorney for over 35 years, representing local families and small businesses. Dave's the chair of the Ulster County Human Rights Commission, a deacon in the United Methodist Church, and serves on the boards of Family of Woodstock, Midtown Rising, and Caring Hands Soup Kitchen. David Clegg. And they're not putting on an act. They're all very friendly with each other. I saw them in the back room, and at least when they're with each other, they're nice to each other. Our moderators, Jasmine Gripper. She's the legislative director and statewide education advocate for the Alliance for Quality Education in Albany. Karen Scharf. She's the executive director of Citizen Action of New York and co-chair of the New York Working Families Party. Our timer is Axel Clavier, a Bard student who will be sitting over there near the piano. And we'll just go over the rules quickly and we'll get going. Each candidate, there he is. We have a lot to go through tonight, so each candidate will be given 1 minute each to answer a question. It's a little tight, but there are a lot of candidates and a lot of subjects to hit. But that allows us to touch more things. So to the candidates, brevity is your friend, and the timer is not. At the end of the questioning, each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to present their argument about why they should be the Democratic nominee for the House from New York 19. So we'll start the questioning with Jasmine Gripper.
Great. We're going to start with Gareth first, and then we're going to work our way over for the first question, and the second question will go to Antonio. First question. So far this year, 421 people have been killed in mass shootings in the United States. What many of those shootings have in common is the use of assault rifles. Overall, there are 38,000 gun deaths in the U.S. just last year. Would you vote to ban the sale and ownership of assault rifles, yes or no? What do you intend to include in your platform position on gun control and gun safety? And will you actively run on this issue?
Thank you for the question. It's an extraordinarily serious question when we see what's happening across the entire nation. And yes, I will vote, and because I believe there's no need on our streets to have military-grade, fully automatic assault weapons on our streets. There's no reason that we need those out there. But I know this as well. I will not let John Faso have a second term because of the Second Amendment. Because many of us in this room, we know it well. The Republicans will try to use this issue against us. I grew up here in New York 19 working on a farm. A gun for us was a tool. And I know from talking to my friends when I served on the fire department, a lot of folks still tell me, Gareth, the reason we have guns is we don't even have cell phone service. If we tried to call the local sheriff, it would take 20, 30 minutes for them to even get here. We cannot, you have my vote in Congress on smart gun safety legislation, making sure that people have to pass a background check, safe storage, banning assault weapons. But I think it's very important that we don't let the Republicans use this as a wedge issue to drive out Republican votes and give John Faso a second term. Thank you.
Good evening. It's good to be here in my home county, Dutchess County. I want to start by saying that we have a real problem, and it is called gun violence. I think we have got to get to the point now where we acknowledge how serious this is. And that we deal with it in a serious manner. For too long, we have put this issue aside and allowed a small group of individuals with too much power within the NRA to dictate the terms of the conversation. More than 70% of folks in the NRA want background checks. More than 70% of folks in the NRA want to close gun show loopholes. The problem is there's a group within there of powerful lobby interests that are dictating the terms with their NRA report card, and individuals like John Faso want to make sure that they get their A instead of having actual courage and standing up and being leaders in this critical time. It boggles my mind that the CDC cannot even study gun violence. Time. Thank you.
I want to take just 2 seconds to say that this is absolutely phenomenal to see this room completely full, and thank you all for being here. This is a really serious question, but thank you. I'm glad to be here. So growing up here, I grew up in Kingston. I've grown up around responsible gun owners my whole life. I, having served in the military, was trained and consider myself a responsible gun owner. But I have seen firsthand what weapons of war can do, the violence and damage that they can inflict. And they have no place on our streets, in our schools, at our concerts. We cannot let the memory of these horrific incidents that keep happening over and over too often fade away with no action. And you have my word, I believe that leadership on this issue is about relentlessly fighting to ensure that these attacks cannot happen again, and that's what I will do. Thank you.
We have an epidemic of gun violence in this country, and the vast majority of people support sensible gun laws, and so do I, and one of those is banning assault weapons. Why is this issue even dividing us? I think this is one of the issues that is used to divide us, even though the majority of gun owners and non-gun owners see this epidemic taking place and have the same agreement on the issues. So how did it happen? I think it's an issue where we get divided tribally, where we shouldn't be. I myself come from a family farm where I have used a gun and we own one as a tool. But I'm also somebody with a national security background. I served in the CIA as an intelligence officer. I served overseas with the State Department. And one of my friends, a close friend, monitors our no-fly list. And he has said to me on many occasions, how is it possible that I'm keeping a list of people that can't go on our flights, but I can't make a list of people that can't buy guns in this country? It's an outrage, and we have to change it.
I live in Greene County. We hear gunshots year-round, during hunting season and not during hunting season. Guns are a part of life in rural communities like in Greene County and Hunter, New York. But I also know that my brother was killed by a weapon of mass destruction. And these military-grade guns are the same thing. They're weapons of mass destruction. So when I go out and talk to gun owners and I say, you can no longer buy Semtex, which is what killed my brother, why is it that we allow people to buy weapons of mass destruction? And hey, since Donald Trump became president, I became a new believer in the role of the Second Amendment, and it's important to give ourselves the right to defend ourselves. So that's no longer a dividing issue between us and gun owners. 90% of gun owners do not, in fact, belong to the NRA. We talk to gun owners, we make them part of the solution, we bring them into the fold. So yes, I am for a ban on assault weapons, I'm a ban on these military-style weapons, and I'm also for background checks. We can do this collaboratively with, in a bipartisan way with Republicans. Thank you.
We can do something about gun violence. We can replace John Faso. Today, the Judiciary Committee of Congress has approved H.R. 38. H.R. 38, concealed carry permission, to come from any state in the United States and carry a concealed weapon and be in our streets. Somebody in other states who could be a violent criminal can come into our state and carry a concealed weapon. 40 years ago, I had a good friend who I worked alongside of as a carpenter. I went to law school, he went to the NYPD. A year later, he was shot dead in a subway station by a violent criminal carrying a concealed weapon. I will never, ever, ever not defend the clear need to restrict guns, restrict gun violence, to take whatever measures can be done to protect our citizenship. Public safety comes over the NRA.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Polling shows that 60% of Americans believe the federal government should ensure that everyone has health care. Yeah. We've won that. But meanwhile, while the Republicans have failed so far to repeal Obamacare, thanks to many of the people in this room, thank you. While the Republicans have so far failed to repeal Obamacare, what do you believe needs to be fixed in the Affordable Care Act? Do you support universal health care? And what path do you see to getting there?
So I do believe that we have to do our best to make sure that we expand affordable quality health care for everyone. And I think that we can first focus on one key principle, that principle. How do we expand it? We have a Republican Congress right now that is dead set on taking it away from the most vulnerable amongst us. To me, the most viable option to do this is to expand or add a public competitor to the market in the form of a public option. Give folks the option to opt into Medicaid or Medicare. What this does is by introducing that public competitor, drives down premiums, drives down deductibles, and also gives folks the opportunity who like their health care to keep it. I think what we're going to see over time is folks will then choose to opt into Medicare or Medicaid, and we will make our way in a very natural, organic way towards a single-payer system, with the system being able to take that transition over an extended period of time in a far more democratic process. That, to me, is the best approach. Thank you.
We need universal coverage that is quality and affordable for every single American, period. This is not a partisan issue. It's the right thing to do, and it's the economically smart thing to do for our entire country. Yet somehow, we find ourselves day after day, week after week, defending the gains that we fought for and won over the last decade. So the way I think about this is we are fighting right now, and we've got to focus on how do we preserve what we've got and how do we continue to improve and expand. I think one of the first area that I would be focused on is prescription drug prices, a huge driver of costs in our system. We know the way this is done is completely unfair and in favor of the pharmaceutical companies. We also have seen our current representative, John Faso, where he stands on healthcare. If he had his way, 60,000 of our friends and neighbors would have lost their healthcare coverage. That is unacceptable.
Time.
Thank you very much.
We have a health crisis in our country and in our district, and the solution to that crisis is Medicare for All. It's House Resolution 676, and it would be the first vote I would cast if I were elected to Congress. Read between the lines of the answers you just heard, because they're not answers very different from what John Faso himself is going to put forward when he runs for re-election. He's going to claim that he wants to help people get universal coverage. He's going to claim that he wants to expand access, but he's not actually going to do it. And why is he not going to do it, and why are some Democrats not going to do it? Because there is a lot of money angled against it. Large profits are being made by a health insurance industry that is profiteering on the sick. The Affordable Care Act has been a great step forward, but it was made with compromises with the health industry that actually raised insurance profits and actually caused prescription drug prices to go up. I know people in this district, many of them friends of mine, who even with their health care still don't have health care. They can't afford CT scans when their doctor asks them for it. I know a man named Frank Arguini in Montgomery who can't afford the very drugs that he has to get by. Thank you.
I think the healthcare issue represents a problem with the Democratic Party. We keep equivocating and triangulating and moderating rather than saying what we believe in. In 2004, I put together an activist group because we felt that the Democratic Party didn't stand for anything anymore. We didn't believe in anything. And top of our list, what we said we should believe in is universal health care and Medicare for all. Back in 2004, we said that. And I think today, what we need to do is we need to stand for something. We need to say we believe in Medicare for all, and we're going to figure out how to get there. We might start with a public option, but we keep selling out. We keep going incrementally. We have to start telling people what we believe in. And if we believe in it, they just might follow us. They just might believe that we're authentically for something rather than saying that we're selling out to special interests. We're selling out to the insurance industry. We have to say that we believe in Medicare for all, and we will stop at nothing to make it happen. That's what's going to bring people back to the Democratic Party. Thank you.
I'm fully behind Medicare for all. My first child was born with a congenital condition. It risked her life. Her life was in danger. She needed long-term care. We'd gotten the insurance coverage for her during the pregnancy. When the insurance company realized it was congenital, they said it was a pre-existing condition because it was done in utero. That insurance company was putting their profit over the life of my daughter. Now that didn't stand. I'm a lawyer, I took care of it. She got the care she needed. But I will never I will never allow the profit motive of some insurance company to decide whether somebody gets medical care. Everybody in this country, every American should get the care that they need. And I will use all my strength, every ounce of my strength, to fight for that in Congress. Thank you.
The numbers here are very simple. 18% of our economy we spend on healthcare. $10,000 a year per American we spend on healthcare. That's twice as much as any other industrialized nation. And we're 37th in results. But what really breaks my heart is I was online the other day and I went on Facebook, and one of my friends from high school, middle-class family, their father got cancer, and what did they have to do? They had to start a GoFundMe page to pay for it. These are folks who pay for their health care, pay for health insurance, and have turned to GoFundMe. And I feel that pain. I have lived here in this community without health insurance. I lost a parent to cancer in this community. I know the heartbreak that these families feel. And I believe as long as our healthcare system puts profits ahead of people, it will always have this problem. Medicare for all is the answer. We spent $2 trillion on the war in Iraq. Don't tell me that we can't pay for it, because we absolutely can't pay for it. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We had some audience members submit questions in advance. This first question is from the audience, Joan Daydone of Millerton. We have ICE agents picking up law-abiding Hudson Valley residents who have been living in the area for over 10 years, whose children are citizens, but who are facing deportation because of our dysfunctional immigration policy. What are you going to do to help protect undocumented neighbors who are vital to the economy of our region? We're starting with you, Pat.
Where's Joan? I'm sorry, I didn't see.
Joan.
Hey, Joan, thank you. When I was in Iraq, I had an interpreter named Ali. Every day, Ali went out on patrol with us. He risked his life for me. He risked his life for my fellow soldiers. He was shot once 7 times for working with us, with U.S. forces. After all of that, I had to fight for years to get him and his family a special immigrant visa to come to our country to be safe. The day that President Trump announced his Muslim ban, I immediately thought of Ali and his wife, Layla. He called me. He was worried that he was in danger, that he was no longer welcome. He's exactly the kind of person we want and we need in our country. We need comprehensive immigration reform so people like Ali, people who want to come to our country, make our society better, make our economy stronger, can come here, and that's what I'm excited to work on.
Joan, I agree with you. We're a nation of immigrants. I don't know how some people in this country have forgotten it. Maybe too much time has passed. But I've known it every day. I worked with Iraqis myself overseas who, after risking their life for us, found out that their lives were in danger in their country and needed to come here. I worked with a reporter to put them in touch with a reporter for The New Yorker, and the resulting coverage actually created the special immigrant visa that got Iraqis here. And I housed some of them at my home and have been involved in their immigration process. My grandparents were all immigrants to this country. They all came here as refugees from Europe after surviving the Holocaust. It is inhumane and un-American for us to take people who are living in this country, who were born in this country, who are trying to make a life in this country, not give them a path to citizenship. It's also senseless for our communities, because our communities rely on many of these workers, rely on many of these people. They're part of the fabric of our lives. And it's also dangerous for law enforcement to have people who are afraid to step forward. We need immigration reform in this country very badly.
I'm the grandson of 4 Irish immigrants who came here to escape economic and religious persecution. So in the 1990s, when I saw the attack on the immigrant community, I started working for immigrant rights and spent countless hours down at the church and taught English as a second language to undocumented immigrant workers. When I heard their stories, it's about a path to citizenship. So the first thing I would do was we have to figure out the DACA problem right away. It's right now that we're in an uncertainty that is unfair to everyone. And the second thing, most importantly, Ted Kennedy and George W. Bush were actually close on comprehensive immigration reform. It is a bipartisan issue, but it's been hyper-polarized in our current political environment. We need to come forth with a solution for a path towards citizenship and a path that makes them part of our community, because the numbers are there overwhelmingly. The reason why the US economy grows faster than Europe and Japan is because of immigrants. They are the lifeblood of our communities. We not only have to protect them, we have to embrace them and encourage them and make it part of what we as Democrats believe in. Thank you.
As chairperson of the Human Rights Commission in Ulster County, we've made immigration rights a key for the last 6 months, knowing what's going on with ICE and with the Trump administration. We brought in the local district attorney and we brought in the local sheriff in Ulster County and tried to figure out what we can do to make sure that people aren't transported to ICE. Now in Ulster County we have a cooperative relationship going on where unless they go through the right warrant procedure, they will not get an immigrant, whether he's documented or not, out of the jail. We've worked with the justice courts in Ulster County, and that could be done here in Dutchess County too, to not set bail that's too high for them to meet, because once they go to the jail, there can be a consequence. I'm working with my church. We have a sanctuary city policy over in Kingston. We were supported by the Human Rights Commission. My church also provides sanctuary support and offers itself to people who are afraid that they might lose their children. So we have done everything we can. Thank you.
Immigrants are part of the fabric of our community. They're our pastors, our teachers, our friends. And for folks like myself who grew up working on a farm, they're an integral part of your life right here in New York 19. I'll tell you, this year, for farmers in our community, if you have vegetables or apples or livestock, the seasonal labor is very, very important. If folks are the same families which have been coming here for years and years didn't come this time around, you can go bankrupt. I'll tell you one thing. John Faso and Donald Trump, they've never spent a day working on a farm. They've never spent a day working with their hands. They had no idea how this toxic immigration rhetoric that came out of Donald Trump's mouth, that was on his Twitter account, how it affected our farms, how it scared away families. Maybe someone got a traffic ticket back in the 1980s and said, you know what? I'm going to sit this time out. I'm not going to come, even though I had that visa in my hand. It hurt our farmers. It drove up the cost of doing business. And it's so important that if we want to help our immigrant community, we stand up to this toxic rhetoric that's coming out of Donald Trump and John Faso.
It's very hard to talk about this subject in just a minute. It's a moral issue, and it requires great leadership. We don't have a leader right now, not just in the White House, but here in the 19th District. We need, first and foremost, to restore DACA clean, no contingencies, immediately. Immediately, it should not be up for discussion, and the fact that it is deeply problematic. Second, I've traveled around this district, and I agree that we have to make sure that whether it's the seasonal farmers or whether it's dairy farmers, we have mechanisms that allow much of the backbone of our workforce to come out of the shadows. The H-2A is a program, but what about the labor that works on dairy farms, which is annually? Right now, there are no mechanisms to bring folks out of the shadows and encourage a path to citizenship. And the fact that we have a president of the United States who literally goes out of his way to undermine the fabric of who we are as a nation is deeply problematic and morally bankrupt. And it's important that we put people in office who actually care and love their neighbors and all people. Thank you.
As we saw in the November 7th elections, the underlying political issue facing candidates from both parties is the leadership of President Trump. How will you deal with that in a campaign to unseat the Republican incumbent in District 19? And we're starting with Jeff.
No one is above the law in this country, not a congressman, not anybody here, and not the President of the United States. If I'm honored to be elected to Congress, I will definitely be looking very closely into how this president has already apparently violated the Constitution of the United States by violating the Emoluments Clause, how he is profiting from his office, and we have to ask ourselves very pointed questions about whether or not there are even further crimes that are now going to be exposed by the investigation being done by the FBI, by the former FBI director. This issue is so much bigger, though, than just the president. This is a question about what's become of our country. I think our democracy's in danger right now. I think we're sliding towards an oligarchy in this country. And we're doing it because we're failing to unite on issues that more than 90% of us could agree on. Those are progressive causes that serve the working people of this country, and not the Goldman Sachs executives that are being put repeatedly in charge of our Treasury Department so as to take away our money. I think we need to unite on this, and we can make a big difference.
I had the opportunity to work with Bob Mueller for many years on the Lockerbie investigation. I trust the work that he's doing, and I think that we need to hold Trump accountable, but as well as all the people in his administration. But I also believe we need to hold John Faso responsible. And we can't tell people they're wrong to vote for John Faso or they're wrong to vote for Donald Trump, but we can tell them that they were betrayed. And betrayal is the only truth that sticks. So my approach isn't to go out there and say to Trump voters and to Faso voters and say, you know, guys, we're wrong. See, we told you this would happen. It's to go out and say, listen, they betrayed you. And you know what? We were humbled by it. And we as Democrats need to see this as an opportunity to say, you know what? Hey, we learned a lesson, right? And we are going to start paying attention to the issues of the working class rather than just the rich and the Wall Street guys. And we're going to come forward with things that we believe in, not just what our donors want us to believe in. We're going to come forward and say that we're for creating jobs and have a Marshall Plan for the American worker. We believe in Medicare for all. We believe in defending public education. We sell those ideas, and we'll be able to take down Trump and John Faso. Thank you.
Based on what I'm hearing on my way in here, I think Donald Trump may not be around for too long. General Flynn is throwing him under the bus right now, which we all love, and it's deserved. So look, I feel like we need to go after Trump. Definitely go after Trump. Trump is the antithesis of everything I believe about our democracy. What has he done? Who is he? He is a moron. Plus an arrogant buffoon, but besides that, he's dangerous. He's dangerous for the world. He's dangerous for our public safety. He has put the fossil fuel industry above everything, above our climate, above our environment. He's put Betsy DeVos in there, who is tearing up our public school system. He's put people in every potential category that's protecting the consumer. He's put in somebody from Wall Street who's absolutely against protecting the consumer. Time. Thank you.
Since we mentioned the November 7th election, I have to say, can we give a huge round of applause to its now official county controller, Robin Lois, who officially won. And to your great county chair that made it happen, Elisa Sumner, and everyone in this room. I believe what we saw on November 7th is how we're going to win on 2018 November. We're going to do exactly what Robin did, what Chris Munn did here in Red Hook. We got to show up in go to every door. We got to show up. It doesn't matter if they're Democrat, Republican, Independent, and that's what I'm doing with my campaign. I got a Winnebago. I'm going to all 163 towns here in New York 19, because I believe when those attack ads come, and they will, because we have Robert Mercer against us and the Koch brothers, when those attacks come, they better have met the candidate. They better know who they're voting for. And I'm going out there, I'm talking to Trump voters, I'm talking to Republican voters, because I want them to know me, I want them to know what I stand for, and probably not supposed to say this, but the quicker we get rid of Donald Trump, the better. The longer he's in there, the more dangerous it is for America. And when I'm in Congress, let's make sure that happens. Thank you.
This is serious. We have a crisis of leadership right now. And I think focusing on the role our congressman is currently playing within the backdrop of all the insanity that is coming out of D.C. Reveals an awful lot about the nature of the man that I'm hoping to replace. We've had several things that have gone on here on the national scale, which he's commented nothing about, whether it was the Muslim ban, whether it was the insane comments about Charlottesville and how both sides are correct, whether it's the transgender ban, whether it's all the idiocy that's coming out on tweets with regards to North Korea. I have not heard a peep, not a peep, from our congressman. That's blatantly disregard to this community. Where's the leadership? I'm tired of it. I'm tired of an empty suit. I'm tired of a man with no integrity and no principles who will stand up and speak and have a spine. And it's not just Fazio. It's a lot of folks in Congress right now who are not speaking from their heart, from a place of truth, and speaking truth to power. And I can promise you this, that's what I'm going to do. Thank you.
So it was just over a year ago, and almost a majority of American voters went out and voted for Donald Trump. They voted for a person who I think, along with my colleagues, is the antithesis of a leader who's in way over his head in policy, domestic and foreign, and who basically, I think, ran a campaign of, I'm gonna blow up the system. And there were enough Americans, including a majority in this congressional district, who had lost faith in our country, in the core principles of our democracy, in our ability as Democrats to take care of them, to get them jobs, health care, to protect our environment, that they voted for him, and they voted for John Faso. So what are we going to do to win back the 7% of people here who voted for Donald Trump, the 8% of people who voted for John Faso? That was his winning margin here. We've got to offer better alternatives. It's important to call out the risks and the dangers. We've got to talk about what we're going to do as a Democratic Party to fix it and to provide solutions.
Thank you. Okay, next question. The unemployment rate in the counties covered by District 19 tracks the national average, just over 4%. That's considered a full employment economy, but statistically, we are within the danger zone of another recession. What would you propose to do to create and maintain good jobs in this district?
I've been a small business owner and operator pretty much most of my life. The lawn business I started when I was 11 years old was a great engine for the kids in the local neighborhood. We offered full benefits, including ice cream on Fridays. I've run technology companies, I've run media companies, I've run marketing companies, but I've learned the most in the last 12 years running factories here in the United States. We moved 400 jobs from Asia to the United States because we invested in automation, we invested in upskilling our employees, and we were able to increase our average workers' pay by 40%. A lot of other companies would like to do the same thing, but career politicians like John Faso know nothing about job creation. I've created over 400 good-paying American jobs, he's created 0. And based on my experience, that's why I'm calling for a Marshall Plan for the American worker, because they've been decimated by automation and artificial intelligence, starting with investments in infrastructure, both digital and physical, training and retraining, which was the #1 issue brought up in a meeting I had with the Dutchess Chamber of Commerce recently. Investing in both time. Oh my God, so close. More later on that, thank you.
I'm also a small businessman. I've run a successful small business over in Ulster County for the last 35 years. And I've been a member of the Chamber of Commerce for the last 30 years. And I've worked for and with businesses throughout our community for the last 30 plus years. And I know what it takes to make good jobs and to pay fair wages and to give good benefits like health care to people. Now, as a freshman congressman, I don't have a Marshall Plan, but what I would do is I would support the act, the Move America Forward that right now Sean Patrick Maloney is proposing in Congress. And what that would do would be to bring billions of dollars into both the rural communities and the urban communities to fix infrastructure that we need. I know over in Kingston, we have sewage problems that overruns and into the Rondout and into the Hudson, and that needs hundreds of thousands of dollars to be corrected. Those are good jobs, it cleans the environment, and it gives us a future that's clean and better. There are jobs throughout this district if we could get broadband, and part of the infrastructure program is to get broadband throughout. So thank you.
I know from personal experience how difficult it is for a young person who grows up and goes to high school in this community to find a job after high school. I went out and got a job drilling water wells, didn't pay a lot of money. I had to work at my local deli on the weekends to make ends meet. It was hard, and out on this campaign trail talking to folks, I know a lot of people are working 40 hours a week jobs, but they're working 2 of them. They're working time and overtime just to make ends meet. So the unemployment rate really doesn't tell the story. And how we have to do it is we have to rethink our community college system. We talk about 2-year college. We need to start thinking about 1-year college, because we have a lot of unfilled jobs in these communities, and people who are taking those jobs are coming in from outside the community to take them, because we have to do a better job of training our young people. I'll say this, our community colleges are underfunded. We're giving tax breaks to people who have private planes. We're spending $2 billion to build a wall on our border when our local community colleges can't even hire another member of the faculty. They can't expand to help our young people here in the community. And our member of Congress is completely silent on this issue. He's with Trump, he's with Paul Ryan. We have to get him out of there if we want to give opportunities for our young people.
When I was growing up in Schenectady, my parents worked at General Electric, and those jobs were critically important. We were a working class family, and I remember how valuable those jobs were. We worked our way up from working class to middle class during that time. But over the years, what we've seen is a shift. Globalization, technology advancing, jobs like GE or IBM's being able to come in these areas and employ thousands of people is not going to work anymore. So we need leadership on this issue. And I believe the way to do it is first to identify all the critical growth areas in this district. And there are those that are there, whether it's renewable energy, whether it's agricultural space or high-tech manufacturing jobs. You find them, you identify them, and then you empower them. You empower them by figuring out ways to get access to capital, making it easier for banks, community banks to loan to them. You invest in them as well through grant programs. You invest in them and connect all that growth through infrastructure spending. And then lastly, you piece it all together with education. Not just educating K through 12 and pre-K, universal pre-K, but also educating our workforce and make sure they're properly trained for the new technology that's out there today. Thank you.
When I got out of the Army, I came back to our country. I started a tech company. We grew and created 150 tech jobs, good jobs in today's tech economy. We did it by in-house building a skills training program for veterans that were coming home from serving. We gave them the tech skills they needed and got them good jobs. We need programs, more programs like that here, where 70% of our young people in this district don't go to college. We need to give them more viable pathways, if they put in the work, to get a good paying job. 97% of the businesses in this district are small businesses under 100 employees. Yet John Faso, and everything he's done in Washington, is advocating for big corporations and the ultra wealthy. The engine of growth here, we know this, is small business. I'm going to be talking about this throughout my campaign because I think this is the key to allowing our economy to continue to develop, to continue to improve, and that's what I'm going to be focused on as my #1 priority. Thank you.
We don't have enough jobs, and the jobs that we have aren't what they should be because of corporate power and corporate greed that has altered our economy for the worse. I'm the only candidate up here who is unfortunately engaged in the struggle of being a 2-income family, trying to raise a family in this district with both me and my wife working, and I know what these wages are. I also know that these problems are inside the Democratic Party too. You know, some of the candidates up here, one of them shut down a factory in Buffalo, moved jobs to the Dominican Republic, and moved his corporate headquarters to North Carolina out of New York State. Another one of them works for one of the largest lobbying law firms in the United States. These are the ways our tax code's been altered. Do y'all know about the Culinary Institute of America here in Dutchess County? They just moved to fire 17 union workers because they said they needed to shave off money to keep tuitions low. What they didn't say when I was out there on that strike and protest with those workers was that they paid over $5 million in corporate compensation this past year. This is happening because both parties are in the grip of those corporate forces, and if we stand up against them, we can make an economy that actually works for the working people. Thank you.
We're going to go to another audience question. This question is from Merida Wells of Clinton Corners. Did you not get your chance yet?
No.
Oh, you were present, okay. So this question is from Merida Wells of Clinton Corners. What are your solutions for embracing green energy and solar power for households and businesses? David?
Well, one, I think it's a great idea to become energy independent with clean energy. And I think that we could be the center of that in our district if we get the support from our congresspersons. We, as a country, need to move forward with innovation, with technology, with all the skills that we have in our manufacturing districts and in the academic area where we can catch up to China, for Pete's sakes, on new innovations for clean energy. Now, when we talk about infrastructure, everything that we're going to do with bringing infrastructure into our district is to enable jobs, enable small businesses, use public and private partnerships to develop these industries so that we can partake in it, we can create good jobs, we can create good wages, we can protect our environment, and we can set a standard for cleaning the environment in a way that will go into the future and save future generations from the pollution that we've suffered from. Thank you.
The first step to saying yes to clean energy is saying no to dirty power. I want to say, let's give a round of applause to everyone in this room who made fracking never happen in New York State. Zephyr Teachout, Karen Scharf, the folks who stood on the front line and made sure that it didn't happen. And when I worked in the governor's office, I worked in a number of different ways, on-bill financing, other ways to help promote local clean energy here in New York State. And during that time, when John Faso was in Albany, John Faso was a lobbyist for the pipelines. John Faso was so is it any surprise to us that when he went to Washington, who he would be listening to? Exactly those same folks. John Faso is not on our side on this one, even the least. He's made so much money off of the pipelines coming through our community. And we need a member of Congress who's going to stand up for clean energy, stand up for our environment, someone who knows what it's like to go hiking in the Catskill Mountains, who loves the Hudson River and all we did with Pete Seeger to clean it up. That's what kind of member of Congress I will be. And the contrast between myself and my record and John Faso's could not be clearer. Thank you.
Again, this goes back to a leadership crisis. I think we all know at this point, the science has made it clear, climate change is real. However, we remain at the grip of the fossil fuel industry, who has deliberately spread misinformation to keep us stuck where we are. The fact that one of the richest companies in the world, ExxonMobil, pays, 17.6% corporate tax rate due to federal subsidies and tax breaks. How about we elect people to Congress who say, how about we take those tax credits and we give them to those companies who are investing in renewable energy, since that's the future. The notion that we're going to invest in things that are outdated and outmoded defies logic and common sense. In the economy classes that I studied in, you invest in the future. You invest in growth. You invest in where opportunity is headed, in the trends, all the jobs, and guess what? The environment benefits too. So what's holding us up? A lack of leadership, people. A lack of leadership. Thank you.
I just want to take a minute, and this question about the environment, about energy, reminds me, I know you all have probably mourned this the last week. We lost one of the greatest environmental leaders, our former Congressman Maurice Hinchey, who was my congressman growing up. And I think all of us have huge shoes to fill in trying to carry forward his legacy on the environment, and that's who I look to as an inspiration on this and a lot of other issues. We have, I think, a massive opportunity here. We are reliant on, as others have sort of said, an outdated, outmoded, fossil fuel-based economy, which does very little to benefit our region here. The only thing that really we are is a transit point for trains carrying fossil fuels, for pipelines carrying fossil fuels. That creates risk and very little reward. So looking forward and investing in clean energy will allow us to play to our strengths, create those jobs, and actually emerge ahead of the trend. Thank you.
Climate change is a crisis in our district, and it's a crisis for our planet, and it's the greatest national security threat we have as a country right now. And it is because we are indirectly subsidizing the fossil fuel industry, and those major donors have taken a grip and a hold of our politics. I saw this go down as a diplomat overseas. I saw these interests influence the United States war in the Middle East and continue to push for more conflicts in the Middle East. And unbelievably, when I left my job as a US diplomat after many years, I was offered a job by ExxonMobil to negotiate their oil deals, which I turned down to come back and be a teacher here. And what did I discover but a plant being built for frack gas and major plans afoot for Cricket Valley here? Why is this happening? Because we are not making the investments where we need to. When Indian Point closed, we didn't take into account what the shortfall would be in energy generation here. We need to be looking ahead and planning on infrastructure like we used to as a country. When we do it, we're going to be able to invest in solar energy and in wind and make a difference for our environment, our district, and our planet. Thank you.
I've been an environmental activist since I was a little kid. I remember collecting water samples from streams that we thought were contaminated near our home with my mother. And in the 1990s, early 2000s, when I saw the Bush administration selling out to the fossil fuel industry, I helped establish the New York chapter of something called Environmental Entrepreneurs. And we look for private sector solution with public support. And that is exactly what we can do here with solar energy in this district. I had the opportunity to meet with Jeff Irish at Hudson Solar recently. And in that meeting, we talked about the fact that some of the bills being proposed in Congress are taking back the credits that enable us to make solar affordable for individual residences. We not only need to reinforce those credits for solar, we need to increase them. And on a macro level, we need to invest in and win over the fight to finally pass a carbon tax so we can actually ensure that fossil fuels remain more expensive. I also believe that it's a great opportunity for job creation, leveraging the investment in renewables. Renewables create 5 times the number of jobs versus fossil fuels, and guess what? We don't have any coal mines in this district. So if we want to create jobs, we invest in renewables, and that's how we'll do it. Thank you.
Okay, question 7, we're back at you, Gareth. The Education Department under Betsy DeVos is pushing towards privatizing public education. The current administration has proposed that the federal government expand programs that would allow public money to be used for students to attend private and religious schools through education tax credits. Can you tell us your position on charter schools and voucher programs?
I would not be on this stage today if it wasn't for the public schools in this community and in New York State. I graduated from Kingston High School, became the first in my family to graduate from college, thanks to Pell Grants, CUNY, public education here in New York State. And I would not have done that without the support of the state and the support of the government making sure it happened. So I am as big a fan as you can get of public schools, and I will do everything I can to support public schools. Charter schools should not take away resources from our public schools. Private schools should not take away any resources from our public schools. And we need to do more for our teachers in this community. And this bill that's going through Congress right now, it will eliminate the tax credit for our teachers who aren't making a lot of money. A lot of our teachers are bagging groceries on the weekend because they can't make ends meet. It will take away the tax credit that they use to buy pencils, notebooks for their students. They shouldn't be buying those in the first place, but our schools are so underfunded here in New York and across the nation that they're forced to do it. We need a member of Congress who is a product of the public school system here in this community and who will stand up and fight for public schools here in New York 19.
We had 3 presidential debates, and not a single question was asked about education. Think about that. The gateway to opportunity. That's what it was called when I was growing up. That's what it was called when my wife was growing up in Woodstock and went to Kingston Public High School. We benefited from a public school education. I went on to live a successful life, starting very, very humbly, because of the education that I was provided. Now, my parents made sure every single day they came home from work and asked me, where's your homework? Because they believed in education. They believed in the power of education. This goes back to this idea of investing in our future. What happened to investing in our young people? What happened to investing in their growth and their empowerment and making sure that we all have our priorities in order? We don't have them in order. And I'm talking about making sure we start from the very beginning. Universal pre-K has to be at the top of the list, and we work our way up from there. Similarly, we have to get back to apprenticeship programs, trade schools, vocational schools, and do our part to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to get the job that they deserve on the other side of their education. Thank you.
I grew up watching my mom, who's a teacher in Kingston Public Schools for 30 years. Every year, her class size would get bigger. Every year, the funding and the resources she had to do her job would dwindle. And she would come home, and she worked harder than anyone I know, and she never complained about it. Investing in education is the single most important investment we can make as a community. But right now, I believe we are not arming our young people with the skills they need to be competitive in the new economy that we know we're headed into. I recently put forth a plan, wrote an op-ed in the Times-Herald Record, arguing for a part of the way to fix this, a national service program where if you serve for 2 years, whether in the military, teaching, a nurse in a rural area, we will cover your higher education costs. That would fix the college affordability issue, and it would renew a sense of service and selflessness that I think we desperately need in our country right now.
To answer the question, I do not support the charter school movement in our country. I think this is wrong. I think what we're seeing is a tendency that is going on in more than just education to look by corporate interests at our budget and our treasury and figure out where the pots of money are and then figure out how to get them out, whether it be our public school budget or whether it be our Social Security, which they also want to privatize and rename entitlements. We have to see this for what it is. These are people attempting to dismantle the very infrastructure of our democracy. It means so much to me because I'm a teacher here, and the top 25 hedge fund leaders in the United States earn more than all the kindergarten teachers in America combined, including my wife. And I think it's a disgrace. And some of the workers on my own campaign, one of them was just telling me the other night that she's facing about $60,000 in student loan debt. Many students are graduating with basically a mortgage, but no house and no hope of paying it off. Meanwhile, companies can declare bankruptcy. Meanwhile, companies were able to pay back the TARP debt that they had at a very small interest rate, while these students are saddled with debt for their lives. We have to rebuild our future in this country, and that education is where we do it.
When I saw the attack on public education, rather than just talk about it, I did something about it. My wife and I helped start a specialized public high school for low-income students. And we did it in collaboration with the teachers union, not against the teachers union. Because the answer and the solution for education in this country comes from investing in the teachers, the ones that make it happen. So I think the first and top priority is to make it a national initiative to increase the amount of money that we pay and allocate towards teaching. Because there's something that we all have to realize. We're at a competitive disadvantage on a national basis because of our education system. We don't invest in it. We don't invest in our young people, and it's gonna cause us problems in the future. So I don't support the charter movements. I definitely do not support vouchers, and I support public education. In communities like ours, outside of Kingston and Dutchess County, we only have one school. My daughter, who's sitting in the front row here, she goes to a school with 18 kids in her class. And I'm happy to say that this month, although she's not paying attention to me, this month she was named Student of the Month. And I told her it was only 8. She won't look up from her book.
Time, yes.
I'm talking about my daughter needs time. All right. Thank you.
So public school was the making of me. I was fortunate. I lived in New York City as growing up, and I took a test because a friend of mine wanted some company, and I wound up going to Brooklyn Tech, one of the special high schools in New York City. And all of a sudden, I'm surrounded by all these bright, innovative, diverse students that really raised my level of learning beyond what it ever would have been. So I see that investment in public education is probably the most important part of our democracy. And why aren't there schools in every district that provide the best possible learning and the most diversity and the most innovation possible? Because we don't fund it adequately. Betsy DeVos, I do believe, is a danger to democracy. If you look at, thank you, if you look at the standards that she ignores when she sends these vouchers to these religious schools that she has, there's no standard whatsoever. Thank you.
And we're going to go back to another audience question. This question is from Joan Mandel of Poughkeepsie. Where's Joan? Do you support public campaign financing and automatic voter registration to get big money out of our elections and people back in? So we want a yes or no to that question. And then, how would you work to reduce the impact of big money in elections and increase voter participation? And we're starting with Antonio.
Yes, I certainly support getting money out of politics. It's disgusting. The more and more we are in an unequal society, the more and more money in politics undermines our democracy. So for me, the key question is, first and foremost, how do we overturn Citizens United? That to me requires a constitutional amendment, which I certainly would vote for. I also think that the other piece to this is actually putting folks in office who will fight for publicly financed campaigns. I will. I think it's important that we do this because until we do it, we will find ourselves shut out of the system. And this is a fact of matter. Now, we're all on this stage today trying to get into Congress, trying to represent the people of this district. And I can tell you firsthand that it is hard. It is very hard because it's almost like you have to pay your way in. That's a problem in our system, okay? We have to figure out a way to get beyond that. And I will promise you this, once I get in, I'll be there to do something about it. Thank you.
Yes, unequivocally yes. This is at the heart of the problem that is, I think, rotting our democracy, rotting our electoral system. I've never run for office before. I've served, I've run a business. As I've gotten into this and been doing this for the last 6 months, it's disgusting. It is disgusting. The only way that you can win a campaign right now in our system is to raise a lot of money. That's the reality. It is. It's wrong. I think it's morally reprehensible. But at the same time, we've got a guy in office right now who is doing tremendous damage to our community every day with his votes on health care and the environment and soon to probably be on taxes. So I'm running to win this race. And we're going to work as hard as we possibly can to raise the resources to build a great team to defeat John Faso.
I support campaign finance reform. I support the public financing of elections. And this isn't one where you should just be listening to the pledge of the candidate. This is the test being set for us right now on how we conduct our campaigns. And the simple fact is that big money is pouring into our district, into some of these campaigns. And the people that give you that money, they want something in return, whether you like it or not. I'm running a grassroots campaign in this district, and I'm turning down corporate money. I'm turning down those corporate super PACs, and I'm trying to raise it, and have so far, from all 11 counties in this district, from a wide range of citizens. There's no shortcut to this, but all of us standing up and forming a grassroots movement that can face down the big money in our politics. I know we can do it, but it takes a test. I spoke with a man the other day, and I am fundraising on my campaign, who told me, I really like your campaign, but this thing, rigged economy, I'd write you a big check, but you got to take that off your website, and you got to take it out of your rhetoric. And I said, well, I can't. He said, why? I said, well, because the economy's rigged.
Time.
We have to be honest about the way we run our campaigns, and if we do it, we can change this country.
I have to be honest, I think the Democratic Party is part of the problem. And it's not here at the local level. We get by with very little money, and we get people elected like Robin Lois. We make things happen by working harder than anyone else, and that's the way democracy should work. But I've seen and I've written about the need for electoral reform, the need to get money out of politics because it is what is rotting at the core of our democracy. So I support not only public financing of campaigns, I support term limits, I support eliminating the Electoral College, but I also support more engagement and more involvement from the individual citizens and have more representation in Congress. Here's a question I'll ask you all, and I wrote an article for CNN, and I will end on this. I wrote an op-ed for CNN 4 or 5 years ago. Why are there only 435 members in Congress? Why is it that our representation, why is there 1 for 700,000 people? Look it up, because it's all about corruption and disenfranchisement of the average voter. Thank you.
I am also in favor of public financing. Our system right now is dependent on wealthy donors, not the $50 ones, not the $100 ones, but the $1,000 and the $2,000 and the $5,000 ones. The ones that some people get from hedge fund managers and from CEOs and from high-level corporate donors. That's what our system is dependent on. Lindsey Graham, when he was talking about the tax bill that's presently being voted on, said, if we don't get this done, our donors are going to leave us. Does that tell you what our government's about? We have to find a way to get out of depending on the wealthy and the powerful and the corporate interests to get our country back. You look at this tax bill, and there is no clearer indication of how we've lost our government and how our government has only paid attention to the corporate, wealthy, Wall Street folks. If we have to change. Thank you.
Over the last 10 years, since 2007, the average wealth of a member of Congress has gone up 40%, while the average median American family's wealth has gone down 20%. Right now in Congress, the average member of Congress is worth $1 million, 18 times the amount of the average American here. And I'm not saying anything's wrong with that, but I believe that as long as you have the wealthy elite are the ones running the country, they're only going to be serving the wealthy elite. And I think you see that right now with this tax bill going through. We need working class people in Congress. And when I decided to run, I knew I couldn't write myself a check. My parents weren't going to give me any money. I said, I'm going to do this a completely different way. $19 for New York 19. And I'm proud to say I'm the top grassroots fundraiser in this race, top local fundraiser in this race, 25th nationwide in grassroots fundraising. I'm proud of that, and that's the way I'm running my campaign. 163 towns in this district, going to every community, talking to every voter, and asking for $19 contributions, because I believe that is the only way we will beat John Faso and his Mercer money, because there's unlimited amounts of Mercer money out there, and the only way we beat them is by the grassroots. Thank you. For public financing, yes.
Thank you. This question starts with Pat. One of your primary jobs as a member of Congress would be to bring money home to your district. If Congress delivers major infrastructure funding, what's on your to-do list for District 19?
I'm glad you asked that question. I think the one sliver of hope I had in listening to Donald Trump's campaign was when he talked about infrastructure. I really thought there was an opportunity to bring together a new coalition that would cross traditional partisan lines around real, smart investment in infrastructure in our country. And in a region like the one that we live in, that is so critical. So my priorities would be, one, broadband. I mean, it's 2017, 30 to 40% of our district doesn't have reliable internet access. I don't know how we expect businesses to start and grow, how we expect to expand telemedicine and telehealth, how we expect people to educate themselves. That's number one. Number two, I think we need a rail line on the west side of the Hudson River. I believe that would be a game-changing investment that we could make in this community. It would create immediate jobs to build it. and it would lay a foundation to grow our economy and be competitive again. Thank you.
Infrastructure spending is the way we're going to create employment, boost our economy, and revive this district. So that would be at the very top of any agenda that tries to make a difference here in New York 19. It would certainly be at the top of mine. We right now are spending nothing on our infrastructure when you account for inflation and the degradation of our infrastructure in our country. I spent the other day in Rensselaer County with the highway department there with a group of men who meet in their morning coffee clutch and told me that they basically are looking at failing roads, failing bridges, and no budget to do anything about it. We're waiting for disasters to happen. So the number one thing I think we have to do is deal with our roads, deal with our bridges. We also have about 24% of the public schools in this country that are considered to be decrepit. Okay, that's absurd, and it's a disgrace for our country. So we have to be investing in those schools as well. And we have to be investing in solar and wind. Those are jobs that can't be exported. And they also save our economy and our environment at the same time. When we do those things, I know we can make a big difference.
The first step is the transportation infrastructure, both rail lines as well as Route 17, which is going to have 4 million new visitors, are going to go into Sullivan County on Route 17 on a highway that hasn't been upgraded since the 1950s. Here in Dutchess County, you have a population that is very much a service economy. Your two largest employers are hospitals and education, and you don't have any public transportation to support that. It's all cars, and you don't have the roads to support that, and they're decaying and they're not growing. So we have to invest in transportation infrastructure in both roads and bridges, rail, but also we have to look at leveraging technology to have transportation by buses as we have an aging population. Uber has figured out how to use GPS to get cars to the right place at the right time. We've done nothing with transportation infrastructure and public transportation and buses in order to make a difference. When we talk about infrastructure, the third thing is the energy infrastructure. If we go to more distributed economy and distributed energy infrastructure with more investment in solar, especially in this district, we can make a big difference not only in the lives of the people who get cleaner energy, but also in the workers that can be there. You get paid a lot more installing solar energy than you get paid doing fossil fuel jobs. Thank you.
I've already spoken about a crying need that I know about, which is to clean up our sewage systems, especially all the towns that are along the river. I happen to know a lot about Kingston, and I know about the Rondout, and the water is unfit to swim in, and it's certainly unfit to drink, and it's certainly unfit to take any fish out of there and eat them, and the mercury levels and the levels of toxic arsenic and other heavy metals that get into our water, our storm sewer systems that bleed into our sewer systems and cause it to overflow when there's too much rain or too much storm and then flows into our rivers. All of that needs substantial infrastructure funding. And all of that would make, once again, our environment better, our river better, our valley better, and our lives better. Now, everything that's been said here I agree with in terms of infrastructure for bridges, for roads. As much as we can do, it is a public safety issue as well as a jobs issue. And thank you.
I was out in Roxbury last weekend talking with a local bed and breakfast owner. And I said, how's business going? And he said, it's going good. But, a couple weekends ago, we're very excited for this big conference. Google was going to come in and do a conference here, whole week. The whole town everyone was all excited. Then they canceled at the last minute because they found out that in Roxbury, New York, there's no high-speed internet and there's no cell phone service, and they canceled. And I am sick and tired of hearing from entrepreneurs and business owners looking at this community that we wanted to come and invest in upstate New York, and we came up the Taconic. We couldn't keep a cell phone call going. Our GPS went out. And I think if we want to keep our young people here in upstate New York, we have seen a brain drain of our homegrown young people who grew up here, leave for college, and never come back. If we want to keep them here, we have to invest in our broadband, we have to invest in cell phone service, or we will keep losing. We have everything else here. We have the Hudson River, we have the universities, we have so much great things going on. but we're losing jobs to Ann Arbor, to Boulder, Colorado. We can have those jobs here in our community if we invest in our infrastructure.
Not many folks know this, but the third largest rural population in the country is in New York. We are very sort of New York City centric sometimes when we think about New York. But much of those rural places are right here in the 19th district. So I think I agree with much of what was said, but one of the things that I really want to focus on is agribusiness and understanding how we leverage our natural resources right here at home. There are an abundance of local farming communities all throughout this district. And what infrastructure do we have in place to connect those farms and not only feed folks here locally, but meet unmet demand within the district and beyond the district? That, to me, is how we leverage what we already have. And right now, we have no leadership on this question. The way to get there is to figure out how we can invest infrastructure building around regional distribution plants, regional processing plants, marketing plants that have multiplier effects within our district and enable local farmers right here to cooperate at home. And from there, they continue to have a stake in their product. I was in Schoharie not long ago at a dairy farmer, and they both told me this issue was a real problem for them. And the question is, how do we build the infrastructure out to connect the local farming community? Thank you.
This question is from Ian Schrank of Statsburg. How should corporate taxes be reformed? And let me add to that, McConnell's saying he's got the votes to pass the Republican tax plan tonight, so this is really timely. So if you could add to that question of how should they be reformed, do corporate taxes need to be reduced to stimulate the economy? If so, how much? And if not, why not? And we're starting with Jeff.
This isn't a tax plan, it's a tax scam. And corporate taxes do not need to be reduced. They are already extremely low in our country. And what is going on right now is almost like something out of a mystery play, because you can't understand why our Congress is pursuing things that the vast majority of us know are wrong. Why are they doing it? Well, they are now officially servants of their donor class, and John Faso is that. And I'm not afraid to say that to his face. I believe he is somebody who has been bought off by hedge fund leaders in New York City and basically sent to our district to extract our wealth, extract our tax dollars, and shift them into New York City to that donor base and take them away from us. So I would stand up to that. I would also add that right now, corporations have rigged our tax code so as to not pay. IBM was a major employer here. We found out over the years that IBM has been parking billions of dollars in profits overseas. We have the Walton family, which is the product of a lot here, that has more wealth than 130 million Americans. This is absurd and a disgrace, and we have to stand up to it. Thank you.
If we want to get this economy going, we have to invest in labor and not capital. And what this tax plan does, it takes money, again, out of the hands of labor and small businesses and gives it to large corporations who are just going to hand it on over to large shareholders. That's all it does. It's a transfer of wealth up and out to major shareholders. And it's money that's coming out of our pockets and the pockets of our community. So yes, corporate taxes do need to be reformed. They need to be reformed to help people who work for a living rather than people who own for a living. They need to be reformed so that people in this community who own small businesses and are paying 35 or 39% tax rates when Fortune 500 companies on average pay 14.5% tax rate. When people like Mitt Romney pays a 13% tax rate and everyone in here is struggling to get by because they're paying their 35% tax rate. That's what's wrong. We reward capital. We don't reward labor anymore. And if we want to grow this economy, we have to figure out how to get money back into the hands of the workers rather than give it. Because you know what? You cut taxes and give it to rich people, they don't spend it. They don't invest. These big corporations sat in a room. How many of you are going to increase investments in capital? Nobody raised their hand because they're not. I've been involved in small business for a long time. I pay a much higher tax rate than any of these Fortune 500 companies. Taxes do need to be reformed. They reform to benefit small businesses, not big corporations. Thank you.
I genuinely do not know why anyone in New York would vote for a Republican after this tax bill. Anyone, please. Now, I've said this before, the corporate share of our tax burden back in 1952, the year that John Faso was born, was over 30%. Now, before this tax bill, What it's down to now is about 10%. And I'm sure it's going to go down below 10% after this bill goes through. So the corporate share of carrying our country that they get so much benefit from and so much profit from keeps going down coincidentally. How could that happen? Now look, everything in this tax bill is something that is an unbelievable benefit to only the wealthy, to only the super rich, to only the owner class. There's little breadcrumbs coming down to us from that. You all remember the trickle-down theory during the Reagan administration. And it didn't work, by the way. Thank you.
The stakes on this bill are incredibly high. 57,000 people here in Dutchess County, if this bill becomes law, will see their taxes go up $2,000. $2,000. Let me ask a question. Where is our member of Congress? He took that vote, and then he disappeared. 48 hours before that vote passed the House, he said he was undecided. There's a lot to like in this bill, he said. 24 hours before it passed, he put out a little press release, said, I'm going to vote no, disappeared. No speeches on the House floor, nothing. When 57,000 people in this county are going to see their taxes go up by $2,000. He's a coward. He doesn't show up. He doesn't do town hall meetings. He hides behind a phone. The corporate tax rate is good where it is. We need to help our small businesses. When our small businesses in our community, when they need a loan, where do you think they go? Wells Fargo? Nope, they go to Rhinebeck Bank. They go to our community banks who need the help, who need the protections. And you look what's happening in Washington, where they're gutting the Consumer Financial Protection Board, which is another transfer of power, hurting our small local banks, which are the only tool for many of our local businesses, and giving it over to the big wealthy banks.
This is a real moral crisis. You know, when you go back to the AHCA, and the objective there was to take health care away from the most vulnerable in order to create a tax break for the wealthy few. Fast forward some months later, and here we are again, having working and middle-class families have to pay for a tax break for the wealthy few. Now, when I was growing up in church, and my mother there had me there every Sunday, I learned a very important lesson. You don't step on people who are hurting. You help them. You show compassion. You show empathy. So when I was thinking about this tax plan, I thought to myself, great, how are we going to deal with this staggering inequality in our country? 1% owning 90% of the wealth, 1% making 50% of their income. What are we going to do about that? And the answer that we get from a Republican-controlled Congress is, well, we're just going to keep giving them money. We're going to keep throwing gasoline on the fire. We need to keep the corporate rate, I'll tell you, right where it needs to be. And I think what we need to do is close these loopholes that allow the corporations to hide their money overseas. That, to me, is how we get this thing back on track. Thank you.
So I've been traveling all across the district. I've talked to thousands of people about dozens and dozens of issues. The issue of tax reform, as I've traveled around, as this has been the hot topic, I have not talked to one person, seriously, one person who supported this tax bill and this idea of what is so clearly giving massive tax cuts to big corporations and ultra-wealthy people at the expense of every single person in this room. And everyone I've talked to, small business owners, teachers, larger business owners, they all see it for what it is, and they know that it's, at its core, not good for our society and our economy. What we've got to do, though, as a Democratic Party, we've got to put better plans forward on all of these things. We got to put forward a tax plan that actually makes everyone pay their fair share. We got to put forward a tax plan that structures incentives for small businesses to make investments in training their workforce, growing their company. That's how we're going to take back the seat, and that's how we're going to get our economy across the country back on track.
All right, that's the end of our questions and answers tonight. Let's give them a bigger round of applause. And they were so good about obeying the time limit.
Yes, they were.
So each of our candidates now has a minute and a half to tell us why they, in particular, should be the Democratic nominee from the 19th District. We'll start with Gareth Rhodes. And could each of you just say your name again at the top of your speech? Thank you.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you, Gareth Rhodes. I want to say thank you to Karen and Jasmine for making the time to do this tonight, and thank you so much to everyone in this room who December before this election came out today, and thank you for your help as well on the local elections, because that paved the way for what will happen next year. And because we turned Dutchess County blue, thanks to Lisa, Robin, we're going to turn New York 19 blue next year. And I was out with a local county legislative candidate here in Dutchess County before the elections. We were late at night going door to door, walked up a long driveway. I saw in the window, I saw Lou Dobbs on TV inside. Every single pickup truck outside was Make America Great Again. We looked at each other and said, maybe we do this door, maybe we don't. We decided to do it. We knocked on the door, and the county legislator said, you should vote for me because I'm against the prison. And the homeowner said, you're right. We have far too many people in prison. Why are we building a new jail here? And then she looked at me and said, are you running against FASO? I said, yes. She said, you have my vote because my husband works at the local hospital. And if this health care bill passes, he will lose his job. So you have my vote. But don't you say anything bad about Donald Trump because he's making government run like a business. And I wasn't going to say anything like one of his businesses, right? I believe if we want to win this race as Democrats, we have to show up in every town, and we have to be able to answer the question, are you one of us, and what have you done for us? I was born and raised in this community. I grew up in this community. I worked a working class job, drilling water wells, serving on my local fire department. I've worked in government here in New York State, here in this community. I was here after Hurricane Irene. I want to use that government experience and that knowledge of this community to serve my community in Congress and repeal and replace John Faso. Thank you very much.
So thank you all for coming out. I thought this was an incredibly informative event. I think the energy and turnout here is incredible. We have to keep it up until we take this seat back. Now, I think to beat John Faso, 3 things you need from your candidate: outwork, outraise, outorganize. I think I can do all 3 better than anybody on this stage. I come from a working class family. I know something about hard work. In fact, my parents told me since I was yay high that I would have to work twice as hard every day of my life to get ahead in this country. And I've done that. And I've applied that work ethic to raising money. I have outraised John Faso. Again, only candidate on this stage that can say this. Every single quarter this year. And I can tell you something about those monies, the money that I've raised. Not a dollar. It's corporate. Every single dollar from an individual. Work ethic. Now, what are we going to do with that money? We're going to spend it. We're going to go everywhere across this district. We're going to get the message of working families out there. We're going to get the message for economic empowerment and growth out there. We're going to get the message of truth and compassion and empathy and understanding and unity out there. That's what we're going to do with our resources. Now, when you look on this stage, ask yourself, who is going to turn out the vote? Who is going to inspire us, mobilize us, organize us, and work with us and listen to get the job done? I'm telling you something right now. I think I'm that candidate, and I want your vote. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. This has been an amazing night. If there's one thing that's clear, it's that John Faso is not the right person to represent the hardworking families of this community, of our community. We need to defeat John Faso. I believe I'm the most qualified to do that. Here's why. First, we need someone who gets this community. I was born and raised here in Kingston. My family's been here 5 generations. My mom, a school teacher, my dad, a small business owner. I come from a family just like the families that I want to represent and serve. Secondly, we need a representative who understands how to create good jobs, who understands business, When I got out of the Army, I grew a tech company from 5 to 150 employees. I want to be a champion for small business here in our district. That will be the engine of growth. And finally, we deserve a representative who has a proven record of putting our community and our country ahead of themselves. I've tried to do this my whole life. I've wanted to serve it. It led me to West Point. It guided me through 2 deployments in Iraq. And when I was in Iraq, I wasn't thinking about Democrats. I wasn't thinking about Republicans. I was thinking about my country. That's what I want to do for this community as your representative. Thank you.
We have such a solemn task here because the eyes of the country are on us. Most people don't get to make a difference with their congressman. Most people are stuck in a gerrymandered district. We're not. And the way to beat John Faso, who is not the representative, he's the unrepresentative of this district, is to have the right messenger and the right message. The right messenger is somebody with government experience. I'm the only candidate on this stage who spent a decade in the US government. I worked as a decorated diplomat overseas. I worked as an intelligence officer in Washington. I worked with congressmen and senators. The other thing is to have somebody that's connected to the community. Most of the candidates on the stage moved here in order to run. Only 2 of us actually voted against John Faso in 2016 before deciding to run against him. That's important. I work here and I know what it means to struggle to get by and the salaries that people are struggling with here. And that's what leads me to the right message. The right message here is a progressive message that unites a wide swath of people behind policies that will really benefit them. There's a health crisis in our home, and the answer to that crisis is Medicare for all. If we proudly say that, they will flock to us. And I have met many of these citizens on both sides of the political spectrum. I've spoken to them as somebody that's farmed in the Hudson Valley. I've spoken to them as somebody that works here and somebody that served this country with distinction overseas. And what I found time and again is that when you have the background and the credentials to get in the door, and you talk to people about the struggle they're having getting by, and how you actually can make government a force to help them, and help the 90% of the people who are being so badly served by our government, that people will respond to it. And I think when we do that with a grassroots campaign, we're going to take back this district, and then we're going to take back our country. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. I ask for your vote based on my 30-year track record of getting things done as a progressive Democrat. I walked on picket lines as a union member, not a spectator. I taught English as a second language to undocumented immigrant communities. I helped save my wife's family farm. I helped start a specialized public high school in the inner city. I've worked tirelessly for progressive causes my entire life. And I stand here today and say, to me, to be a Democrat is to be a progressive Democrat, full stop. I also believe in the private sector. I've had the opportunity to create hundreds of middle-skill factory jobs. And working in factories has taught me something, that there's nothing more essential to self-worth than the dignity of work, than the pride of a decent job and a decent paycheck. And we as Democrats can once again be the party of the American worker. We can once again create an America that works for all of us. Now, I had the opportunity when my brother was killed to work on national security. And I got specific legislation passed, including getting quoted in the US Senate. And when we did that, we made airline safety secure, we protected our homeland, and eventually we put 2 terrorists in prison.
Time.
I want to tell you something. I'm not afraid of taking on John Faso. And John Faso, I'm coming for you.
So I'm your neighbor. I've been across the river in Woodstock and Kingston for the last 36 years. We haven't talked much about it, but I've done a lot in the community to make the community a better place to live in. whether it's helping start the homeless shelter, or helping start Habitat for Humanity, or working with Mid-Hudson Legal Services back when I first got here and being president and trying to bring the justice system in this area to a higher level, or whether it's working on the Human Rights Commission and trying to bring LGBTQ rights to the forefront. Right now, we talk about crossovers. I was asked by the Republican leader of the County of Ulster to work on a new human rights law. Yesterday morning, we were drafting that law to protect people and to give them a form in which their rights can be adjusted here locally. I've given back to the community, and I think that's what puts me in the best position to face John Faso. One, I will tell you that I can take him on as a trial lawyer. I have cross-examined 100 witnesses that are better than he is, even though he's pretty slick. And if I get the chance in a debate, you will see he will come out a loser. I have fought against powers that be, against corporations, against multinational corporations, insurance companies when they've hurt workers. I know what it is to fight against power, and what you need to know is that I've won those fights. And if I get the chance to take on the powers behind John Faso, I know how to take them on, and I will win. So if you give me the chance, to go after him, I will be relentless. I will do everything that in my power to win that crucial election. Thank you.
Give them all another good round of applause. So that's almost it for tonight. Before we adjourn, I'd like to introduce Melanie Whaley, the chair of Indivisible, The Fight Is On.
Thank you. Thank you all. Hudson Valley Strong, Indivisible, The Fight Is On, Election at Bard, Bard Center for Civic Engagement, and Bard Democrats would like to thank you for joining us this evening. We hope that you have learned more about our candidates. You will have more opportunities, I'm sure, and I think you'll all agree with me that they're wonderful people. So thank you. In 2018, District 19 has a unique opportunity to change the direction of our government and have an impact on the policies that come out of DC. To grab this opportunity, we ask each of you to commit to at least one action with at least one co-sponsor or host that was represented here tonight. And they're all on the back of the brochure. You can meet them all outside in the atrium. We ask that you don't turn away, but stay informed and resist. We ask that you actively get behind whichever candidate wins the primary. Yeah. Even if you fall in love with one of them before the primary, you must actively work for whichever one wins. We ask that you not just vote in November, but you help get out the vote. This nightmare, the decline of our nation, must end, and we must end it. If you're tired, learn to rest. Don't quit. Thank you.